Thank you. Oh, thank you all. Thanks for the intro. I'm Toby Chapman, for anyone who doesn't know me, and I work for the Christchurch City Council, and I am the Urban Forest Manager. So my talk today is going to be about challenges and opportunities. So I'm going to start with what I'm calling the Big Bad Three, which I think most of our challenges kind of fall into these. So fear of trees, NIMBYism, and space. These are all reoccurring themes that we've heard throughout the day anyway. I'll try and race through those so then we get to a more positive stuff where we start to look at, I think, the positive side of those and how things are starting to turn. So first of all, the fear. I think throughout a lot of our communities and the public, there is a fear that's around trees. There's fear that the tree will fall and hurt someone. Fortunately, I think the arboricultural industry, myself included, have helped with that. The media and lots of things have helped perpetuate that fear of trees. The risk posed by trees is really low. It wasn't the trees that did it, it's actually people who have caused that fear. The fear that trees will break utilities, break services underground. So often we can't plant where there's services because there's a fear that it's going to cause damage. Fear that will damage other infrastructure, so footpath damage that we already have, and then we want to put another tree in, and that always comes up. We've damaged that footpath over there, aren't you just going to damage this one? And then other fears such as the roots will get in, they'll destroy my house foundation, they'll bow my boundary fence, they'll disrupt my letterbox, all of those things, which segues quite nicely into the second one, NIMBYism. So people don't want trees near their property because they're concerned about the shade on their property. Who's going to pick up the leaves, the debris that comes down? These are all challenges that we face when we try to put trees in. The area will be dark and attract unsavoury people. I literally had one come through about 4 or 5 months ago where we were looking at planting trees in a park and someone said it'll attract people who wear masks. So I've got this mental image of someone walking past every day with a mask in their pocket just waiting for these trees to be planted. And when it comes to protecting trees, if you protect a tree on my property, you're going to restrict what I can do. They see the negative side of it. And then the biggest one, which I think comes up again and again, is space. So there's more and more pressure on our roadways. We've heard a lot about this. In the past, we had lovely wide roads, we had parking, two-way streets, some services under the ground. Now we're getting cycleways, we're getting more services under the ground. Off-street parking is becoming harder to have on people's property, so on-street parking is becoming a bigger deal. Even people's garages. A lot of people don't use their garages to park cars in anymore. They use it for their toys, so now they've got more pressure on putting their cars elsewhere. So that creates more challenges for us to include trees. Greater intensification of living. So the property sizes are getting smaller and the houses are getting bigger. We saw some really good examples of that earlier, which makes it more difficult for us to include trees. Soil's come up again and again. We have a habit of scraping all the soil away. There's no soil there, or we put trees into these really tiny areas and expect them to grow, and they don't have the soil and the resources they require. And the other big thing is trees are still considered a nice to have. So they're not always considered something that we have to have. You wouldn't put in a street in without having lighting or a footpath or services underground, but it's quite common to have a project without trees included. So what can or what are we doing about it? So again, when it comes to fear of trees, we can change that perception round. That fear from people is changing. Instead of being scared of the tree, people are starting to be scared of having a future without trees in our urban environments. I get more and more complaints about trees coming down than requests for trees to be removed. So there's a bit of a shift going on there. Water pipes and broken underground services. New services very rarely get damaged. So as those new services get installed and we see less damage, people will be more open to trees. It's gradually changing. Footpath damage. There's a range of engineering solutions that are available to us now to have trees near these footpaths without causing damage in the future. And people are starting to understand that trees are not malicious. They don't deliberately go out and break things. I turn up to people's properties where they're worried about a tree near their house going, you know, it's going to break the foundations of my house. And when you start to explain how trees grow and what they do, you allay a lot of those concerns. So as we have these conversations more and people understand more, this becomes less of an issue. NIMBYism. So we're now shifting to people wanting more trees. So as opposed to people being worried about shade, people are starting to appreciate shade. People are wanting shade for the summer, and it's a different outlook on trees. Who's going to pick up the leaves? Through things like planting a more diverse range of species, we get less leaf litter, but also people understanding more of those benefits. There's less concern about that leaf litter. The area will be dark and attract unsavoury people. Lack of trees is now being seen as social injustice. We had a park in Christchurch which had a really bad reputation and it was really open. And actually to revitalise that space, we're doing quite an intensive tree planting program to get people back into the park and make it more attractive to actually get people using the park. So instead of trees being seen as something that's dangerous, they're actually looking at trees as creating a safer environment. If trees get protected, they'll restrict what we can do. So we're looking at the way these rules apply, and we're looking at that in Christchurch to see if we can make these rules more permissive and look at ways to, in a way, incentivise, so have people see having a protected tree as a positive for their property. And space. So seeing trees as serving more than just amenity. So amenity is one thing, and it's something that we've used a lot in the past, but seeing how trees can cool our environment, how they can clean our air, starting to shift people to see that they're worth having on a street, managing stormwater, so serving more than one purpose. Including more planning rules to require trees. So Christchurch is going through a process of trying to have a requirement for 20% canopy cover at maturity on residential property. We don't know if we'll get it, but that's the things that we're trying to go through. We're trying to put in rules to say that when you have a new street invested to council, there'll be canopy cover requirements, and these are becoming more and more used throughout the country. Soil volume requirements, which are, I can't stress the importance of how important soil is to trees. So having these requirements is really integral. There's no point planting a very large tree with a large canopy if we're not going to give it the soil it needs to get to maturity. So making sure that we have those minimum soil requirements, which are starting to get implemented in different councils, those will all help. And trees not required, so shifting trees to be seen as critical infrastructure. So as a city, we need to make a decision that we need trees in our future. Trees are something we have to have, and making it be something that is required at the same level as the solar critical infrastructure. So on a positive note, I'm yet to meet anyone who says, I hate trees. I think trees are very politically popular, or popular in general with people. Everybody generally says, I love trees. But they just often finish with just not that one. Thank you.